I want to tell you about an alliance that's forming right now, largely beneath the surface of daily news cycles, that has European security officials deeply alarmed. Not because it's unexpected, but because it's accelerating faster than anyone anticipated, and because the implications reach far beyond the two countries involved. Russia and Iran are building what amounts to a comprehensive energy alliance, not just buying and selling oil and gas, but integrating their energy infrastructure, coordinating production, sharing technology, and most importantly, presenting a united front to the world. They're creating something Europe hasn't seen in decades, a regional power bloc built on energy resources that could reshape geopolitics across three continents. Let me be very clear about what's happening, because this isn't just about two countries cooperating. This is about two nations that have been isolated, sanctioned, and pushed to the margins of the international system, deciding they're stronger together. And they're building an alternative architecture that doesn't depend on Western approval, Western finance, or Western markets. And Europe is watching with growing dread, because the implications for European energy security, for Middle Eastern stability, for the global balance of power are profound and deeply unsettling. Let's start with the basics. Why are Russia and Iran doing this? What's driving this alliance? Because understanding the motivation reveals why this is so much more than a temporary partnership of convenience. Russia, after the invasion of Ukraine, faced the most comprehensive sanctions regime ever imposed on a major economy. Cut off from SWIFT, frozen assets in Western banks, oil price caps, technology embargoes, export restrictions. The West threw everything at Russia, trying to cripple their economy and force a change in behavior. It didn't work the way it was supposed to. Russia's economy contracted, yes, but it didn't collapse. And one reason it didn't collapse is because Russia found alternative markets, alternative partners, alternative systems, chief among them, Iran. Iran has been living under sanctions for over 40 years. Since the 1979 revolution, Iran has faced wave after wave of restrictions. They've been cut off from Western financial systems, banned from selling oil freely, denied access to technology. They've learned to survive, to adapt, to build workarounds. Think about what that means. Iran has 4 decades of experience operating outside the Western-dominated system. They know how to move oil without Western tankers. They know how to process payments without Western banks. They know how to acquire technology despite embargoes. They've built an entire shadow economy designed to evade sanctions. Russia needed that expertise. Iran needed Russia's resources and geopolitical weight. The match was natural, almost inevitable. So what does this alliance actually look like on the ground? Let me walk you through the specific mechanisms, because the details reveal how comprehensive and how threatening this partnership has become. First, energy infrastructure integration. Russia and Iran are connecting their electrical grids. They're building pipelines that link their gas fields. They're coordinating on refinery capacity and petrochemical production. This isn't just trade. This is physical integration of energy systems. There's a proposed pipeline that would carry Russian gas through Iran to the Persian Gulf. From there, it could be shipped to Asia, to Africa, bypassing European markets entirely. Another project involves connecting Iranian and Russian railway networks, creating a transportation corridor from the Pacific to the Persian Gulf that doesn't touch European or American-controlled routes. Second, oil and gas coordination. Russia and Iran together control roughly 20% of global oil production and over 40% of the world's natural gas reserves. If they coordinate production levels, they can influence global prices in ways OPEC hasn't been able to do in years. In practice, this means when Western sanctions try to limit Russian oil exports, Iran can reduce its production, tightening global supply and keeping prices high. When Iran faces pressure, Russia can do the same. They're using their combined resource base as both an economic weapon and a shield against sanctions. Third, technology and expertise sharing. Russia has advanced drilling technology, expertise in Arctic and deep water extraction, sophisticated refining capabilities. Iran needs all of that to develop its vast but underdeveloped gas fields. Russia, in turn, needs Iran's experience in sanctions evasion, its networks for moving oil outside Western systems, its financial mechanisms that operate beyond dollar dominance. They're teaching each other. Russian engineers are working in Iranian oil fields. Iranian sanctions evasion specialists are advising Russian companies. It's a knowledge transfer that makes both countries more resilient, more capable, more difficult to pressure. Fourth, and this is crucial, they're building alternative payment systems. Iran has developed its own financial messaging system to replace SWIFT. Russia has its own system, SPFS. They're now linking these systems, allowing transactions between Russian and Iranian banks without touching Western financial infrastructure. They're settling trade in rubles and rials. They're experimenting with cryptocurrency for certain transactions. They're using gold and barter arrangements. The goal is simple: become completely independent of the dollar-based financial system that gives the West its leverage. Now, let me tell you why Europe is so alarmed by this. Because the implications for European security and prosperity are direct and deeply threatening. For decades, Europe's strategy was to integrate Russia economically, believing that interdependence would prevent conflict. Germany built Nord Stream pipelines, making themselves dependent on Russian gas, assuming Russia would never weaponize that dependence because they needed European money. That assumption proved catastrophically wrong. Russia invaded Ukraine anyway. Europe scrambled to find alternative energy sources. They succeeded painfully by buying expensive LNG from America and the Middle East, by rationing, by accepting recession and deindustrialization in energy-intensive sectors. But now, just as Europe thinks it's achieved some stability, a new threat emerges. Russia and Iran coordinating means energy prices can be manipulated against European interests. It means two major producers working together to maximize leverage over global markets. Let me give you a concrete scenario. Imagine tensions escalate between Europe and Iran over Iran's nuclear program. Europe wants to impose new sanctions, but Russia immediately announces production cuts, citing technical problems. Global oil prices spike. European gasoline prices soar. Heating costs for European homes explode. European industries face energy shortages. Europe is forced to choose: back down on Iran sanctions or accept severe economic pain. That's the leverage a coordinated Russia-Iran energy alliance provides. It's a veto over European foreign policy, exercised through energy markets. And it's not just about prices. There's a deeper strategic concern. Russia and Iran are both revisionist powers. They both want to overturn the current international order. They both see the United States and Europe as obstacles to their regional ambitions. Together, they form a bloc that spans from Eastern Europe through the Caucasus and Central Asia to the Persian Gulf. Think about the geography for a moment. This alliance creates a continuous zone of influence from Russia's borders with Europe all the way to the Strait of Hormuz, through which 21% of global oil passes. It's a geographic arc that can threaten energy supplies to Europe, to Asia, to anyone who challenges their interests. European security officials describe this as the emergence of a new regional power bloc, not a formal alliance like NATO, but something more fluid, more adaptable, and in some ways more dangerous, because it's based on shared interests and mutual reinforcement, not on treaty obligations that can be tested or broken. Let me tell you about a conversation I had with a senior European energy official last year. He described the situation this way: for decades, we played divide and conquer. We could negotiate with Russia, pressure Iran, play them against each other. Now they're unified. They coordinate. When we push on one, the other pushes back. We've lost leverage we didn't even know we had. That loss of leverage manifests in multiple ways. Europe wanted to isolate Russia economically. But with Iran as a partner, Russia has alternative markets, alternative supply chains, alternative financial channels. Isolation doesn't work if the isolated country has powerful friends. Europe wanted to pressure Iran on nuclear issues, but with Russia providing diplomatic cover in the UN Security Council, providing technology and investment, Iran is more resilient. They have options they didn't have before. And here's what makes this particularly challenging for European policymakers. The Russia-Iran alliance isn't ideological. It's not based on shared values or political systems. It's purely transactional, based on mutual interest, and that makes it durable. Ideological alliances can fracture when beliefs change. This alliance is based on cold calculation. Russia needs sanctions, evasion, expertise, and alternative markets. Iran needs technology and geopolitical weight. As long as those needs exist, and Western sanctions ensure they will exist, the alliance persists. Now, let me address what this means beyond Europe, because the implications are global. First, it affects Middle Eastern stability. Iran, emboldened by Russian support, becomes more assertive. They expand influence in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen. Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states see a strengthened Iran backed by a nuclear-armed Russia. The regional balance shifts, arms races accelerate, proxy conflicts intensify. Second, it affects Asia. China watches this Russia-Iran alliance and sees a model, countries under Western pressure banding together, building alternative systems, reducing dependence on dollar-dominated markets. China is already cooperating with both Russia and Iran on energy, on trade, on financial systems. A broader alignment between China, Russia, and Iran represents a fundamental challenge to Western-led order. Third, it affects global energy markets in ways we're only beginning to understand. For decades, energy markets operated under implicit Western control. Major producers needed Western technology, Western finance, Western markets. That gave the West enormous influence. But if Russia and Iran can operate independently, if they can develop fields with Chinese technology, finance projects with non-Western capital, sell to Asian and African markets without Western intermediaries, that control evaporates. Energy becomes a weapon in the hands of countries with interests opposed to the West. Let me give you the human dimension of what this means, because grand strategy is ultimately about people's lives. There's a factory worker in Poland. His plant manufactures fertilizer, which requires enormous amounts of natural gas. For years, cheap Russian gas made his job secure, his factory competitive. Then came the war, the sanctions, the supply disruptions. Gas prices exploded. His factory cut production. Jobs were lost. Now, just as things stabilize with new suppliers, he hears about Russia and Iran coordinating energy policy. He knows what that means. Price volatility, supply uncertainty. His job security threatened not by his performance or his company's decisions, but by geopolitical forces he can't control. Or consider a pensioner in Germany. She heats her home with natural gas. Every winter, she worries about heating bills. The Russia-Iran alliance means those bills remain high, unpredictable, vulnerable to manipulation. Her fixed pension buys less. Her quality of life declines. And she's one of millions of Europeans in the same situation. This isn't abstract geopolitics. This is energy poverty. This is factories closing. This is jobs disappearing. This is the real cost of a shifting global order. Now, Europe isn't helpless. They're responding, accelerating renewable energy development, building LNG import terminals, diversifying suppliers, strengthening ties with alternative energy exporters like Norway, Algeria, Azerbaijan, creating strategic reserves, improving energy efficiency. But these adaptations take time, years, decades for full energy independence. And in the meantime, Europe remains vulnerable. The Russia-Iran alliance exploits that vulnerability. And here's what keeps European strategists awake at night. This alliance could expand. Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves and close ties to both Russia and Iran. They could join. Several Central Asian countries, former Soviet republics, are energy rich and increasingly looking to Russia and Iran rather than the West. Even some OPEC members, frustrated with Western pressure, might coordinate more closely with Russia and Iran. Imagine a bloc controlling 40% or 50% of global oil and gas, coordinating production, sharing sanctions evasion techniques, using energy as a geopolitical weapon. That's not a hypothetical. That's the direction we're heading. I've studied energy geopolitics for decades. I've watched how oil shocks in the 1970s reshaped global power, how the fall of the Soviet Union scrambled energy markets, how the shale revolution changed America's strategic position, And I can tell you this, the Russia-Iran energy alliance represents a tectonic shift comparable to those historical moments. Europe built its prosperity partly on cheap, reliable energy. That era is ending, not because resources are running out, but because the countries that control those resources are reorganizing into blocs that don't serve European interests. This is the new reality, a world where energy isn't just a commodity, but a weapon, where suppliers coordinate against consumers, where sanctions create alliances among the sanctioned, where the West's economic leverage is countered by alternative systems built specifically to resist that leverage. Europe is warning about a new regional power bloc because they see it forming. They see Russia and Iran integrating economically, coordinating strategically, presenting a unified front. They see the implications for energy security, for geopolitical influence, for the balance of power across three continents. And they're right to be alarmed because this isn't temporary. This isn't going away when the Ukraine war ends or when Iran makes a nuclear deal. This is structural. This is the world reorganizing into competing blocs with energy as the primary battleground. The Russia-Iran alliance is strengthening. Europe is adapting but struggling. And the rest of the world is watching, calculating, deciding which side offers better opportunities. We're entering an age of energy blocs, of coordinated producers versus desperate consumers, of geopolitics determined not by military might alone, but by control over the resources that power modern civilization. Europe sees it coming. They're warning us. The question is whether we're listening and whether we're prepared for what comes next. Because, ready or not, the energy order that sustained Western prosperity for half a century is breaking apart. And something new, something more dangerous, is taking its shape.